Yeah, just a light little hum. It's nothing major.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township for September 1st, 2020. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd like to take a moment of silence for past Fire Chief O'Keen. Let's take a quick moment of silence. Okay. Our prayers be with the families. That loss is so tragic for our community. And Phil, would you like to lead us in prayer?
Yes. Father in heaven, we thank you for this evening, and we especially thank you for the freedoms we enjoy as a nation and as a community here in Bedford Township. We also thank you for the privilege of meeting to conduct the business of the township. I ask for your blessings upon our community. I ask for wisdom and discernment for each and every one of the board members as they go through the agenda this evening and conduct the business of Bedford Township. I also pray that you'll watch over our first responders, our fire department, and our police officers who operate in this community. And finally, we would ask for special blessings and comfort for the Joe Keene family. We appreciated Joe for many, many years as an exemplary servant in this community on the fire department, and he will be lost and missed. We just pray that you'll be with the family and provide them with comfort in his passing. Pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Item number 2 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Nancy's got her hand up.
Ms. Tinnery.
I'd like to add an item to the agenda before it's approved under 8F, opening the Township Hall.
Support. Okay, we have a motion to support. Ms. Hirschberger, could you call the roll, please? Could you call the roll, please?
Who made the motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay. Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Janzasek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 3 is a consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to A, approve and place on file the minutes of the August 18th, 2020 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, accept with regret the resignation of Sally Dunn as Park Commissioner effective October 7th, 2020. Look for a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Tinnery, supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Hirschberger, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Janzasek?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 4, presentations. 4A is Library Advisory Board presenting landscaping goals for the library, Joyce Blanton. And we have on there also Janelle with the Library Advisory Board. Do you have that on, George?
Janelle,
Yes.
you can go ahead. You're live. Joyce is not on yet, but
Okay.
if you want to go ahead and get started, and then we can kind of see if she comes.
Sure. Okay. Just want to say hi to everybody. I'm Janelle Busalis. I'm the Library Advisory Board Vice President. And we're asking Joyce Blanton to join us today. I think a lot of you already know her. She's a master gardener. She's going to kind of help explain to you guys what we're looking for. We're trying to have her help us figure out some plans for maintenance around the library of landscaping. And she's supposed to help us out and tell you guys a little bit about what it is we're looking for and why we're looking for those choices, so that we can kind of get some quotes set up with you guys so we can get going on that. Since fall's here almost, and we need to get started on any of those concerns at this time. It's the best time of year to do it.
And Janelle, looks like Joyce is in now too.
Great. Okay.
I think. Is she there? Well, maybe not. Oh wait, that was a different. Nope. There she is.
You found her? Good.
Hi, Joyce.
Yeah,
Are you there?
Janelle. Yeah, I'm here. Was
Okay,
Janelle
Joyce.
finished?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I just there for a moment. Yeah, you should have. Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm here. Was Janelle finished? Can you hear?
There's a little bit of a delay. You'll probably have to turn the TV down.
Paul, if we remind everyone this evening, calling.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear?
We can hear you, Joyce.
I can see.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if
Okay. Could everybody else just mute who's not just talking right now, please? Go ahead, Joyce.
okay, are we?
Yep, we're good. Go
Are
ahead.
we ready
Start
here?
talking. Yep, we're ready.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
George, we're getting a lot of feedback on your end because everybody's muted and so am I. I'm not sure what the issue is, but we're getting a lot of feedback.
This is Janelle. I'm still on the call. Should I hang up? Would that help?
Yeah, Janelle, why don't you hang up, Janelle? Maybe that'll help.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
all right.
Okay, did that help, Joyce?
I'm still hearing something going on here.
Joyce, do you have the meeting on like a TV or on a computer or something?
Well, I have the meeting on. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, turn that down or mute that.
Okay, let me.
Then we'll be able to hear.
Yeah, hang on just a minute.
Joyce, do you have the meeting on like a TV or on a computer or something?
No, but I had the meeting on so that I could see you. Hang on.
Yeah, turn the TV off or the YouTube off. Just stay on the phone with us.
I don't. Okay.
Okay, that's better. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, these are fun. All right. Well, you have the information that I prepared for the advisory board at their request in front of you, but I'll just go through
some of the main points on here. You can certainly read it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think, in talking with, I met with Wendy Steinman in front of the library back a few weeks ago, and we walked the library and we talked about the things that needed to be done. And as I looked around, well, first of all, let me back up and explain that I've been involved with public landscaping for like 25 years. I hear somebody talking.
Joyce, we're all muted. Just keep talking. We're good.
Oh, okay, but okay. Anyway, having been involved in public landscaping through master gardeners, through the botanical garden, through committees at the township and so forth, I find that, in talking with the board, we have some goals about, what should be done to re-landscape. And, at the top of the list always has to be, when you're dealing with particularly public landscaping, is ease of maintenance. But other goals were also identified in terms of four-season interest. We want to make sure and select plants that are well adapted to the applicable conditions, including sunshade, soil moisture, and so forth. There seemed to be a real interest in adding some native plants to the landscape to attract birds, butterflies, pollinators, so forth. They want a little more color than what's there. There's shade or to get shade on the south side of the library, but with plant height limited to reduce the long-term effects on buildings and the sidewalk and so forth. So those are kind of the main goals that were identified by the advisory board. In addition to these goals, I would recommend the following. Well, not recommend the following, but there's some things we need to think about with regard to the sprinkler systems and where they are. The tall evergreens that are out in front of the library near the sign, really, I think if it were, my preference, I would probably take those down and replant because they're really too close to the sign and everything. However, they're currently being used for holiday decorations and so forth. So we're going to consider leaving them there for the time being, but maybe long term thinking about how to get an evergreen in there that perhaps is better suited to conditions and is better placement anyway. And the lawn area on the south side where the shade is needed, that is used for children's outdoor experiences, and also the Bedford Flower and Garden Club use that area for their annual garden tour. When we talk about ease of maintenance being a primary goal, there's one thing when we're talking about weedy plants that's really, really important. And I've found this. Now, some people say that I like wild landscaping, but that's not exactly the point. The point is that you can reduce maintenance on your woody plants if you choose plants that are the right shape and for the place you're putting it. That way, you're not having to, prune for the height and width and, so forth. You just have to prune for taking out dead wood, maybe crossing branches, that sort of stuff. I will point out, however, that, proper pruning to retain the natural shape of plants takes a little bit of an art and some training. So I would recommend that, the library consider setting aside a little money for perhaps training some volunteers or, some of their interested personnel. The other point about ease of maintenance, and this also goes to visual impact. And, we have just a gorgeous library here. It is, it's so pretty, and it really deserves
landscaping that will make an impact. But with the size of the building, size of the property, the hardscaping and everything, it's really important that we fit the plantings to fit that size. And that kind of means mass plantings, As a master gardener, I love plants in my own yard. I pick up a new plant and so forth, and where am I going to put this thing? And there's one only thing. But, in thinking about landscaping in a public space, in a big public space like that, we want masses of plants. So that's going to be very important, particularly for the woodies, but also massing perennials and things like that. In big masses so they make an impact. So that means kind of limiting your plant palette, but doing that to create a really good impact for such a beautiful library. Anyway, I did make some recommendations for possible trees. If we want to, think about some natives, there's some things I've mentioned here for the South Lawn area that include the sourwood. It's an absolutely gorgeous tree. It is native to the United States only. It can sometimes, I think, be a little hard to get started, but if we can, find some good sizes of that, that might be an absolutely wonderful tree. The fall color, spring flowers. A smaller tree than that is the service berry. Again, it's the autumn brilliance cultivar is recommended. It has white spring flowers, fall color. It's really, and it has edible berries that the birds absolutely demolish. So you don't end up with berries on the ground because the birds eat them before, people can, and they are edible. But that is a smaller tree. It's like 15 to 25 feet. So, if it's not quite big enough, that might not. We had a recommendation from one of the nurseries on a red point maple. I'm not familiar with that, but it does have a narrower growth habit. And it's supposed to be a slower grower, attaining 40 to 45 feet at the max at mature height. One thing about maples I will mention is, and I don't know about the red point, but maples tend to have kind of a shallow root system. So we might want to think about that since we don't want to be tearing up the sidewalk or anything. Fringe trees, beautiful tree. I have them on the property. Again, it's a smaller tree, 10 to 15 feet. Or we can think about shrubs such as a viburnum, and there are some very large varieties of that get about 15, 20 feet and have berries for birds and so forth. And these are a lot of native varieties. Shrubs for the curved area, we can go with bush honeysuckle, Annabelle hydrangeas. Both of those are kind of suckering plants, so you have to, keep an eye on their roots. So it would take a little root pruning on those to keep them kind of in bounds, but they do fill in nicely and create a nice mass. There's also, a couple of nice things like Weigela and lilac. There's a dwarf pink that could do really well. I have thought about the northeast corner where there's a dying evergreen right now over there. We can put an evergreen of some sort in there, but if we wanted to think about something that's native, there is a dogwood. It's a very large dogwood. It's a wide-spreading tree. I think there's enough room in that space for it. And edible berries just for the birds, and again, native. In front of the parking lot, well, on the east side, in other words, between the road and the parking lot, I would say retain those current low evergreens that are there. They create a mass out there, and they're already there, so we don't have to do anything to them, and they look like they're healthy. So I would say just leave them there, and then we'll think about since there's no sprinkler system in that area right now, maybe think about some drought-tolerant plants to fill in that area to create kind of a garden space. Again, massing plants. At the advisory board meeting the other day, Wendy talked about looking into maybe adding a sprinkler system out there or extending the sprinkler systems out there, and we'll see how that goes. So that could change in terms of recommendations. And then just adding in masses, hardy herbaceous perennials, native grasses, spring blooming bulbs in groupings, around. And then you were furnished with the overhead of the library as well, indicating the areas that we're talking about around the library. And we have added the specs or the things that would be included in a request for quotes from landscaping companies. So that's kind of it. I hadn't mentioned it to the advisory board, but I certainly would be willing to work with them to interview companies if they would like some help, and also, talking with them about, possible suitable plants and everything. So that's kind of it.
All right. Well, very cool. Well, thank you for being on. And any board members have any comments or questions? Okay. Joyce, is there any? Go ahead, Craig.
I do. So this is a millage item for the library, something that was put into this budget year and is something that the Library Advisory Board is looking to get done this fall for a variety of reasons that Joyce, I don't think, mentioned anything much today, but that they want to, this is a job to get done in this fall if possible, and that would be a way better route to go. My thought, to like what Joyce was saying, is I guess the process of this has to be like I said, on that last page, they have their request for the quotes, which is more or less, I guess, a spec sheet. If we want to put this out, and then, because from the sounds of it, pretty much what it'll be is we put this out, landscaping companies are going to come back, and all the stuff that Joyce is talking about, every different landscaping company is going to have a different tree or a different bush or a different whatever, or based off availability or what have you, as to what they're going to bring back to with their quote, I guess. And that if Joyce is willing, would be an invaluable resource to look those over with her expertise and be able to say, no, I wouldn't go with this, but for whatever myriad of reasons, and then be able to move forward with that. So I don't know what exactly we're looking to do with this today. Like if we're gonna, it's a presentation, so we'll probably not make a motion. Go ahead.
If I can interrupt you, I think what we need is for Joyce to do what she's doing, give us a list of exactly what they want done as far as landscaping. We'll put it out for bid. We'll bring it back to the board. So whatever landscaping companies are going to have to bid on exactly what Joyce told them to bid on. We're not asking for their opinions on what should be put there. Joyce is doing that. She's putting the specs together.
Well, that's what I had said. Craig, but like I said, go ahead. Go ahead, Joyce.
But Craig has a good point in that, some of these things are not, could not or may not be readily available. And in my suggested, plantings aren't the only thing by any stretch of the imagination. And Craig has a good point. People are going to want to sell what they have, on hand. So, I guess I have a question too. Who would put together the actual bid specs for this?
At this point, it would be you or the library advisory board to tell us kind of what they want, or we can look to hire a company that could put them together. A local nursery company. I know Housel's Nursery puts together plans at no charge. Ms. Tennevery, go ahead.
Well, we're not leaving out the advisory board. Joyce Blanton is a consultant to the advisory board, and I, as a trustee, appreciate her willingness to work with them. But this is the advisory board. That's what advisory board means. They're advising the township board. So we cannot cut out the advisory board. It's Joyce and the advisory board working together to come up with the specs. We don't need to hire a company. Joyce is plenty equipped and certified to do exactly that. We've just been listening to all of her expertise. And so I mean, it's the advisory board putting this together in relation to the money that they have in their millage. Craig, was this nurse or landscaping thing in this year's budget? Because I know they had a 3 or 4 year plan. So they have it in this year's budget. So okay, then I say it's Joyce as a consultant advising the advisory board that comes back to the township board with their request.
I agree with you 100%. That's what I thought we were getting at and why she's on here, but then she asked what we're going to do. I agree. Let Joyce work with the library advisory board, bring it back to us. Mr. Steiner?
And one of the things too is we need to take what was in the budget this year for this, and we need to provide a target range for the landscape company to come back. No sense in them going through and pricing this way out of range of what we plan to or intend to spend, and then just turn around and throw the plan away. So we need to give them that target. I think Joyce did a nice job on some of the suggestions. That could be part of the spec sheet saying these are some of the suggestions that we have identified. But again, I wouldn't cut them off either and say, don't give us any other options. We want the best and most suitable options, and we also want the best cost as well. So I would use this as the starting point, and then that last page showing the potential request for the quotes, and then a dollar number.
Okay, sounds good. So there you go, Joyce. Work with the library advisory board and come up with a spec sheet, and then at that point we'll put it out for bid. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah, I've looked at those things before, like for the beautification committee and the DDA and everything. I may want to call maybe it would be Trudy that normally puts together some stuff just to remind myself on how that, from a public entity, how the spec sheet needs to look. I have to remind myself. So would Trudy be the right one to call?
Sure.
Yeah, you're looking for the general format. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So
okay,
sounds good. And then we need to do the same thing at the township hall, Joyce. At some point, township hall, we need to remove quite a bit of shrubs and trees and bushes. So
right.
Go ahead, that's right.
Yeah. I know one of the questions was from kind of along the lines of what Joyce is asking. I think like from a process standpoint, if this is a quote or a bid, or how free is the library advisory board in that regard. I know that they were asking that question as well from a dollar amount standpoint.
I'm not sure what they've got budgeted at this point. I'd have to look back in the notes. So that's something they can take a look at, and we can go from there. The whatever.
Yeah, we've had some initial discussions on that, and I sort of have something of an idea. So, I'll be in contact with the advisory board and put something together, and we'll talk to Trudy about, our format, just on the process and on submitting that and everything.
Harry Lammers is very good at putting bid specs together and stuff. He's very detailed, so you can reach out to him as well. He's on the library advisory board as well. So, well, thanks for being here tonight, and thanks for explaining that detailed information. It was very informational, so we appreciate it. So,
okay.
All right. Well, have a good night. Keep moving on here to public comment. Go ahead, George. Do we have any public comments? Mr. Steiner, your hand's up, by the way. Okay, we're going to keep moving on. Just let us know if somebody calls in. AA, vouchers for payment, Ms. Hirschberger.
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $87,674.86. Fire District, $11,472.94. Police Fund, $542.29. Park Fund, $32,131.83. Fire Equipment, $11,885. Transit System Fund, $17,044. Library Fund, $3,495.28. Water Revenue Fund, $2,500. Lewiston Estate SAD, $275. Downtown Development Authority, $872.92. Sewer O&M Fund, $57,024.48. Trust and Agency Fund, $3,035.75, for a grand total of $227,954.35.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Ms. Januzak. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please, Ms. Hirschberger?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. George, do you have any calls? Go ahead with the calls. Hello, state your name and address, please, and give us your comment.
Cindy Miller, 8037 Wiseman. Good evening, board members. I'm calling in tonight to bring in some things to light that I find very disturbing. It has come to my attention that tonight our township supervisor will be asking for the board to bring back Adam, the maintenance worker, to the maintenance team. I think that this is wonderful. Our supervisor proved last week that we have enough maintenance work in the township with the cemeteries and other daily township tasks. What I find disturbing, though, is how he has gone about bringing Adam back to the team. Considering the recent union grievance and that the township has lost against the Teamsters, some of the unions are second-guessing their support of Paul as township supervisor. To try and save his union-friendly reputation, he's agreed to bring Adam back to work. I have it on good authority that during this time, our supervisor has invited another maintenance worker to his house where he has told him that he would have to retire or Adam would lose his job. When he didn't retire, Adam was laid off, and until recently, he had told Adam to find another job because he was never bringing him back to work. With the loss of the grievance and the union support, the supervisor has been calling this retire, going so far as making him come into the office to sign a pre-typed letter with a date of retirement on it. This is not how you should treat an employee or any human being for that matter. I don't want to live in a township that uses intimidation and bullying to solve problems. Here in Bedford Township, we should treat people with respect, and I expect the same thing from my leadership team. I was not sure if the board had this information prior to the meeting, so I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that before voting on it tonight during the agenda item.
Well, your statement's pretty far off, but we appreciate your comments. So I'll give you an update when we talk about the hiring back. Go ahead, George, with the next comment. Okay, go ahead with your name and address. Go ahead with your name and address.
Hi, this is Robert Miller. I was waiting for the finance manager position.
Okay, we're going to put you back in the holding tank till the. Actually, that's the next agenda. So just keep them right there. No more public comments, George. Okay, moving on to 8B, approval to hire a full-time finance manager. Ms. Hirschberger.
So you'll find in your packet a copy of Mr. Miller's resume and his qualifications. We interviewed him, Krista, Ms. Jandasek, myself, and Mr. Steiner, and he interviewed quite well. We're very happy with it. I called on his references. They had great things to say about him. And so I've brought him to the board so that you can ask him questions and we can make a decision hopefully tonight.
Okay. Any board members have any questions for Mr. Miller or thoughts or comments? I know we had a team with Mr. Steiner, Ms. Januzak, and Ms. Hirschberger that interviewed. Heard some positive comments back from them. Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, I know the memo from the clerk stated, please give me a call if you have any questions before the meeting, but as this board knows, after 4 years, I don't make calls to discuss board agenda items. So I'm bringing all of my questions and possible concerns to the board. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for your application and for the expertise that I see, strongly in your resume, in your application. However, I have my first question is, I'm concerned about the lack of governmental accounting, since it says in our statement that I'm sure you received, it says that governmental accounting is strongly. Whoops, I don't have the right thing up here. Excuse me just a minute. Substantial work experience in governmental accounting. It's in the posting for the position. How do you get around the fact that even in your own cover letter, you say lacking government accounting experience?
Yes, the way I'm going to approach that is when I went out and I've already purchased several governmental accounting school books. So I'm going to start reading those right away. Also, you have the MTA online courses. If given the opportunity, I will take those immediately.
Okay, are you a member of the MTA?
No, if I'm brought on.
Okay, so the township, forgive me if this sounds critical, but we're not hiring a trainee. And the MTA courses are that you have to pay for them. So that's what you're saying, that you're going to come on without the experience and the training, and then we're going to pay to train you. Is that what you're saying?
That is an option. The other option, of course, is I've got the governmental accounting books. I'm going to start reading those right away.
Okay. Do you have any experience in the responsibilities in the job description? It says, do you have any experience in using the modified accrual method?
Yes, I am aware of that. We currently use the full accrual method. I'm also strong in reconcilements and project tracking, and that's where I can be really strong.
When you say project tracking, explain that a little. Give me some.
Yep, that's really similar to your budget. What I've done in the past is with projects at my previous employer, they were all assigned a specific budget amount. Then they would have to request, they would submit their POs. Those would get approved. I would track the spending to the project to make sure they did not go over their budget.
Okay. Further down on the responsibilities, it says that our finance manager must maintain the accuracy and integrity of all water, street, lighting district assessments. Have you had any experience with assessments?
Not assessments, no.
No special assessments. It says maintain files and financial documentation for federal and state grants. Have you had any experience with handling?
Nope, I do not have experience. No, I do not have experience with grants.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Those were the questions I had directly. Have you had any experience with the BSNA software?
No, but I do have a lot of experience with corporate software through my previous employers, and we do software upgrades all the time. So we are always constantly learning new software. So for me, learning new software will not be an issue at all.
Okay. Well, not understanding governmental accounting, I think it might not be as easy as you think, because the software comes in addition to learning the governmental accounting. method, the accrual method. It states in your job application that I authorize the township and its agents, including consumer reporting bureaus, to verify any of the information contained in this completed form employment agreement, including but not limited to my criminal history and my motor vehicle driving record. I authorize all persons, schools, and educational institutions, et cetera, to comply and release any information concerning my personal history. However, every page of your application was marked confidential, which, with my integrity, I chose to honor your confidential request. But your statement said that it is open, but I couldn't check it. That, to me, that's misinformation. I feel, I'm sure that you are excellent in your position. I have no question with regard to that. But my concern and my vote tonight has to do with whether or not I believe you're qualified for the position that we're opening. I had been clerk in the past, in the 90s, and I know what it takes to be able to handle governmental accounting. And I'm a little concerned in that area with your qualifications. I'm also concerned that the board was given this document. This is not to you, Mr. Miller, but the board was given this document. Every page was marked confidential, but yet here we are at a public meeting discussing it publicly. So I can't understand why, as a board member, I was restricted from checking information in the application, and yet we're discussing it in a public meeting. So,
yeah, I'm not sure how confidential got on there. Trudy, would you happen to know how confidential got on there?
Yes, I put confidential on there because he's currently employed and we didn't want it to hurt his current employment if the information got out to the general public prior to this meeting. That's all it is.
Ms. Tinberry, you have my permission. It is meant to be public and on my behalf here. I did sign the form to be released.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much. I'm done. That was all of my questions.
Any other board members have comments or questions? Mr. Clemens? Mr. Clemens?
Sorry about that. I was trying to get to the microphone. Mr. Miller, my name is T.C. Clements. I had two questions for you, and one's a follow-up. The first is if you would take 2 to 3 minutes and please relate to us collectively how this position was defined to you. The second question was, during your meeting with some of our board, did you identify or pick up on any deficiencies that we're currently experiencing? And if you did, not that they were implicitly stated, but if you picked up on any of those, could you tell me 1 or 2 of them, please?
Yes. The position defined to me, we did go through the job description. We covered a lot of those items in my initial interview. So I know there's some reconcilements, and budgets would be a large factor involved in that. So the reconcilements and the budgets where I'd be really strong. The deficiencies, of course, would be the culture of working in a government environment and the governmental accounting. But I think, with my schooling history, working through several employers, we're trained to learn new processes all the time. So it should come fairly quickly for me, learning those items.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Any other board members with comments? Questions, concerns?
Mr. Peroni?
Go ahead. Ms. Hirschberger actually had a hand up. But
That's right.
Okay.
You can go.
Go ahead. Mr. Miller, this is Rick Steiner. And I sent out a list of notes to the township board, and I know this is a little bit different type of interview process. I mean, you could sit in front of 7 of us in a room, and 7 of us, like we are today, via internet, and probably a lot different. But some of the things that I know that we discussed, and I want to point out to you that I did point many things out to the township board, and I'd like to just mention a couple of these, and you may be able to extrapolate on some of these that could answer some questions. And a lot of this is based on your responses during our interview process. Experience with budgets and creating budgets, general ledgers and account management, project budgets and project and capital expenditure planning, working with project management and fixed assets, capital equipment budgeting preparation, monthly and month-end reporting, journal entry reconciliation, and close of books. You've got some flexibility and used to working in a fast-paced environment. Township is not quite as fast-paced as a lot of environments, so that's a plus. Planning and organizing, talked about planning and executing and meeting deadlines and due dates. Plan for the execution of proper tax returns. Prioritize high dollar amounts for value analysis, meeting with project managers and leads to review variances to costs and determine the corrective action. Manage to meet the due dates and expectations of those budgets. Always evaluating work processes for continuous improvement opportunities. From an analytical side, using the appropriate tools and software, which one of them would be the BS&A. You also have general experience with various other types of software and corporate programs. You're proficient in MS Excel, pivot table slicers, Microsoft Access, etc. I did mention a little bit of our conversation about working with difficult people or personalities and how you would handle that. And then also we talked a little bit about the annual audits and how you would work your preparation and provide all the documentation, the organization, and transmitting all the information to the auditor, and continue to work with the auditor until a successful final audit. I know I said a lot there, but those are some of the things that we discussed in our interview process. And if you can pick up on any of those, or you have a question for me of what I just read quickly, if you could extrapolate on any parts of that.
Yes, all that is accurate. One thing I would like to expand on a little bit. I am very familiar with the Excel pivot tables. I also went out to your website, pulled the expenditures, converted that to Excel, and then broke that out into a pivot table with filters and slicers. And I'd be happy to forward that to you if you'd like.
I do have a copy of that, Mr. Miller.
Ms. Tinnery? You're muted, Ms. Tinnery.
With all due respect, Rick, I read your memo. I read all those things. I have no question that this man has expertise and is excellent in his field. However, we published a finance manager request, and it specifically says, with substantial work experience in governmental accounting and budgeting. You have not had experience in governmental accounting, and so I'm not sure you understand the difference between an accountant and being able to manage the accrual method of governmental accounting. I mean, I just don't. I'm not questioning this man's integrity or anything about his current ability or his expertise in his area, but I don't know how when we ask for a person with substantial work experience in governmental accounting, and then we're going to hire someone who doesn't have no experience and no experience in our current software. I'm asking, I guess I'm going to ask Trudy, how you expect to go. I want to vote for this. I don't want to hire somebody on a 6-0 vote, but I haven't heard anything yet that is convincing me that this is going to work out. We've had so many months and even years of problems, and I'm concerned that we're not going to be back in the same old boat. So Trudy, would you mind commenting how you're going to manage this?
Sure.
Trudy, if I could just respond to that real quick. I just want to say, and again, like you said, Nancy, no disrespect, but I do remember a couple meetings ago, you said this is almost like accounting 101 and anybody could do that job. And we didn't need a finance manager or a director. And I'm not going to say that Mr. Miller doesn't have some things that need to be worked on. I agree with that, but I also don't want to sit here and hear from just myself and Trudy. I want to hear, and you, which I'm really appreciative of all your input, Nancy, and I take it all to heart. But I want everybody to have some major input, because any and all that would potentially still be on the next township board need to have a comfort level that this man's going to be the right person to do the job or not. So I would like everybody to sort of weigh in here.
Well, let's let Ms. Hurst finish the comment first.
Okay. I came to this job without government experience. I learned the job. I have all the faith in the world that this gentleman with accounting background can learn this job. I know there's some differences, but he has enough experience to get around those differences and learn the job. We'll do a review in 3 months, see what he's strong at, see what he's weak at, give him some pointers, and then a 6-month review could be brought back to the board, and we can see how he's doing at that point. We didn't have anyone with any kind of governmental experience apply, and as I told you before, when I was looking for somebody temporarily, that's a high-paying job, and no one's interested in coming for what Bedford Township wants to pay. There are too many jobs out there that they can get those high top dollars for it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any comments, Mr. Clemens?
So, Mr. Miller, I apologize. This is, without question, probably the most bizarre interview you'll ever experience in your lifetime. My question, I echo a lot of what Nancy has said, and I think that it's the reason why we're having this conversation. But I also was part of the group that agreed that Ms. Jandisek, Ms. Hirschberger, and Mr. Steiner would actually conduct the interview. So that's where I fall back on my peers. And I agree with what you're saying, Trudy. I think somebody can come to the job and learn. I think, most employment at this level, it's not like he's never been around accounting before. He certainly understands chart of accounts. He understands how to classify expenditures, journal entries. I mean, we're really not talking about someone who's coming from a completely different field and having to truly start from zero. But my question would be this. The three of you did the interview, and I guess there's no other way to do this without really putting you on the spot, and I apologize. But are the three of you sure that you heard enough and saw enough that you feel like that Mr. Miller is a viable candidate, will do a good job in the position, and will elevate it beyond the problems that we were experiencing before we went out and searched for a candidate? Thank you.
I believe so. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't have brought him to this board to begin with. But I believe he has the knowledge and enough experience that he'll be able to pick this job up and be able to run with it without the issues that we saw before. And a lot of you wanted POs. He's very experienced with POs, so we could kick that in.
Right.
Thank you.
I agree with Trudy as well, because I too came in here with no experience, and yes, it's obviously different from what Trudy does and what the finance manager would be doing, but it's once you get to learning the programs and working with them, it becomes second nature. And he's been through many different conversions and changeovers, so I feel that he would be well versed in that type of situation, and I feel very comfortable hiring him and making the job successful.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
You're fine. You're fine.
And I'll jump back in here, Mr. Clements. One of the things during the conversation in the interview with Mr. Miller, I think he got a clear perspective from at least myself, and I believe Trudy and Krista as well, but I mean, I won't speak for them, but I think he got a real quick glimpse of some pretty high expectations, wanting to set some extremely high standards, and also asked him if he was to be hired to be part of improving and even setting the bar higher to the standards, not only within that specific job, but also with the project management, setting the budgets, meeting with department heads, keeping their budgets on goal, which is similar to his project tracking and his capital expenditure tracking, et cetera. He had very good responses to that. As Ms. Jandisek and Ms. Hershberger said, neither one of them came to their job initially with a lot of experience in their roles at all. They learned it. But again, I think the one thing with Mr. Miller, with the accounting background experience that he does have, I think these other things will come second nature. One of the things that I expressed to Ms. Jandisek, Ms. Hershberger, when we talked about the offer of the position, I strongly recommended that we do a 3-month review. And to me, it's a two-way street. It's fairness on both sides of the fence, where at 3 months, we sit down, we talk to Mr. Miller, and if he's doing everything perfectly, we let him know that he's doing great. If we set any new expectations or things that we think he should continue to do or improve. The other side of that is if he's deficient in anything, we need to identify it. Identify the deficiencies, document the deficiencies, let the man know this is what's lacking, and give him the opportunity to make those improvements or changes. And at 6 months, when you have that final review that comes back before the board, nobody has any questions. So when he comes back, and if he's met everything that he was told that he needed to improve upon or to change, he's met all those, there's no question about it in 6 months. If he didn't meet those, then it's up to the board whether to continue or whether to pass.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Montry.
Yeah, I'll just share my thoughts. So I feel like I agree probably with everybody. I feel like this is pretty straightforward though. In that I agree with TC, and like we did an interview process. I agree with Trudy that we didn't have anyone that fulfilled all the requirements. And then how I look at it is I think there's just always this like giant fear, like it's this terrible thing to ever let anybody go. I think this seems like it's like the worst thing in the world if it turns out that Mr. Miller's completely incompetent and just can't handle this whatsoever, which I don't think is going to be the case whatsoever. Then you figure something out and you let him go and you move on. That's life. I feel like that's always like we're making this a bigger decision than it needs to be, and I feel like seems completely confident and competent. And we did our interview process. We didn't have anybody that fulfilled all the requirements. And with the review process set up as it is in the packet, I think it seems simple enough. And I'd make a motion if nobody else has anything.
I have something I'd like to add.
Go ahead.
Mr. Miller, the biggest frustration I've seen since I've been involved in this government is the finance department. It's frustrating almost every time we do budget time, and it's been one of the biggest frustrations that we ask for certain things and we haven't been able to get it. So you've got some big shoes to fill, but it sounds like you're willing to fill them. It sounds like you're a go-getter and your application looks very good, and it sounds like you're willing to learn. And that's what we need. I feel like, we've put our trust in Trudy and Krista and Rick to find a candidate. I'm disappointed only one came forward. I'm not sure what we could have done different. It sounds like Ms. Hershberger put it out everywhere she possibly could to find a candidate. But it is what it is. We put stuff out for bid all the time and only get one bidder sometimes. But like Mr. Montre said, if things don't work out down the road, that's when we'll come back to the table and just say, hey, it's not working out, or, whatever. Mr. Steiner?
Yeah, and you said one thing there that I think, again, during the interview process, I think Mr. Miller understands that I have extremely high expectations, as well as I believe the other 6 board members do as well. He understands that he ultimately reports to the township board, even though he has a direct report manager. So I think that if we all continue to set high standards for him, if we keep high standards and target those goals, and one of the biggest things, again, is document the process. And that's one of the things that when we talk to Mr. Miller, I think he has some great organizational skills. So when it comes to documentation, keeping your ducks in a row and being able to present accordingly. And that's one of the things I know we had some deficiencies at times when finance would come to board meetings. The ducks weren't in a row. And I think that Mr. Miller clearly understands what we asked for when we talked about putting everything in alignment. So we get what we asked for. Now, again, sometimes there's things that are asked during a board meeting to a finance manager person that you're not going to have the answer right in front of you. But I think that a lot of what he has, I think he'll have more answers at his fingertips than we've had for quite a few years. So I think, again, keep the standards high.
I've got a quick suggestion. With some of the unknowns, Ms. Tinever has brought up, they're valid points. I know we're starting them off at 58. Could we start off at a lower number? And then at 3 months, we give half of the difference. And then at 6 months, we give it the full. And, on top of that, you'd get the 2% in the fall as well, or in February as well. You could start out at 55 or 54. And then after 3 months, you give 2 more. If things are going well, we have the first 3-month meeting. And at 6 months, if things are going very well, we get through a budget, things go smooth, then you give the full. Ms. Tinever?
Well, I'm not in agreement with that. He came, he applied for, and the committee agreed on the level that is given. I don't think that, I believe that he can learn. I'm not saying that he can't. Just quickly, Rick, if I said those words that you said, then they were taken out of context, or I said them in the wrong thing, because we've all seen for the last year how difficult things can be if the finances are not in order. So
that's correct.
I've heard enough that I'm not a go along to get along. So what I heard from Trudy is that she's willing to put in the time to make sure Mr. Miller is trained and trained well. It's a difficult time for her as clerk with the election coming up, but she's made it clear that she's willing to do that. And so, I'm convinced. However, I do have one other question. It sounds like he has a lot of training that he's prepared and planning on doing. Is that going to be on township time, or is that training going to be on his own time? Because, as I said, I'm not interested in hiring a trainee. However, he does have substantial background in accounting, just not strictly governmental accounting. So,
Nancy, that's a good point, and I think that Mr. Miller would probably be in agreement that just by him already going out and getting some certain supplies and training manuals, I think he would be understanding that he needs to do that on his own. Down the road, depending on what direction we want to keep or take, if there's an MDA course that makes sense, of course, that would have to be approved through Trudy's budget. That's a different story. And if I continue working from home for a while, and I'd be willing to come in and try to take a lunch hour, come over and sit with Mr. Miller if there's anything that I can help with. Trudy, if you want me to come in and try to do anything with him and outline some goals, outline the standards that we want and expectations, We can carry that all back to the board and see if everybody likes those expectations. And again, I would encourage anybody on the board, if you have any specific expectations that you would want this gentleman to put forward, send them to us. Let's get it documented, get a document trail. So again, nobody could ever say, well, you didn't do this. And then the person says, well, you never told me that's what you wanted. And I find that and it's not just township government, that's in business in general. People have in their mind, they know what they want, but if they don't communicate what they want, they have no recourse when somebody doesn't do it. And to me, there's a lot always lacking in multiple organizations. So documentation and communication are extremely key to this.
Okay, I look for a motion.
Mr. Montre had his hand up for something.
Well, I'll make the motion. No, two parts. So what I was going to say was, didn't we have the MTA courses paid for free now, right?
Correct.
So that would all be that wouldn't have to be anything outside of what we already have covered.
And that's what I wanted to say with Nancy's question about training. If those MTA classes land during company time, I would expect that we'd want him to take those. So I was going to say both, because some of them may land during business time and we'd want him to take them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
True.
If he's a go-getter, he's going to be doing stuff nonstop to get it down, you know, and if the MTA class pops up during the week, absolutely take the class. So,
right.
Go ahead, Mr. Montre.
I got one more question. Mr. Miller, you were an accounting teacher at Bedford High School, were you?
No, I was not.
I didn't see it in my my accounting teacher in high school was, if I'm not mistaken, was named Bob Miller. But
wow.
I didn't see it in the resume. I didn't see it in the resume, so I assumed so. But yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve to hire Mr. Miller as the finance manager as presented.
I'll second that. And can I just make one amendment there? I know it was published, but I'd like to still clearly say that we owe him a 3-month review with expectations and then a 6-month review with expectations and send it to the township board.
Ms. Tennevery?
Could we include the annual salary in there so that it's in the motion? and then, well, go ahead, get the second, and then I have another question.
We have a second.
Oh, you do? Well, so it's discussion.
Well, I'm going to make sure he's okay with that being in the motion, and this is support.
You better be.
You're good? Okay. Discussion, Ms. Tennevery, go ahead.
Well, it just came to me. We have an audit coming up. Yeah, and I'm hoping that the audit will be done before this board is completed in November 20th. So I know you're busy, Trudy, but I think it's something that this board should be the one to hear the financial report for the expenses made during the fiscal year that, you know, we just finished. So we have an audit coming up. Has that been scheduled, and will Mr. Miller be subject to performing during that audit?
I have been in touch with the new auditors. They've sent.
What is the call-in? What is the call-in number? George, what's the call-in number? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Sperger. Sorry.
Where are we at?
Yeah, I'm trying to get over here.
The audit.
Yeah, the audit will start in October. I've already given him some information, so Mr. Miller would be part of that audit, and the auditor wants to start the beginning of October.
So will that be done by November 20th?
I can double check that. I'm not sure how long he was anticipating the audit taking, but I can double check with them and tell him that this board was trying to get it before then.
I think that's only fair that it's for the former fiscal year. So anyway, all right.
While we're on discussion, do we want to, are we putting a start date, and what will the overlap be with the person currently covering that position? Will there be overlap, or how?
I was hoping there would
Casey,
be
if-
overlap, and I'm not sure with Mr. Miller what kind of date he has to give his current employer. Is he still on the phone?
I think he is, but we did talk about 2 weeks when we interviewed.
Yep.
Do you have a start date? 2 weeks?
Yes, 2 weeks.
So if you went in tomorrow, could you do September 14th, which is a Monday?
Yes.
I think I'm okay with all those.
Okay.
I'm okay with all those amendments as long as Trudy is.
Well,
Accepted.
Yeah.
You have them all. You got them all covered. Okay.
Yes.
Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Montry,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Clemens,
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry,
Aye.
Ms. Janzisek,
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 8C, approval to bring back a full-time maintenance employee. Did the caller that called in about the maintenance call any of the board members that are here tonight? Nobody? So I just find it bothersome that somebody's willing to call in without calling one board member or myself to ask about a situation, and then coming on public camera and saying some of those things. But let me get the facts out there. When this board had to lay off 5 people, one of them was a maintenance worker. The discussion that was had with the maintenance supervisor was, can Dave Rudd perform everything that you guys can perform, being Adam and Pat? And the answer was yes. Okay, so last week we got to sitting around thinking, I wonder if Mr. Rudd can perform a funeral on his own, if Mr. Thatcher isn't here. And so I called him, and he told me, no, he cannot do one on his own. So at that point, I went to Ms. Hirschberger, and I said, you have an issue with funerals. I said, if Pat's on vacation or he's sick, you have nobody that can dig him at that point. And Adam can. So the information that was given to me by the supervisor at the time was not correct. So we had to solve a problem. So then it came to my attention that Mr. Rudd was planning to retire even earlier, which would have been early November. I was told originally when we were doing layoffs, it would be late spring. It's a whole different realm. So he's retiring early November. So I told Ms. Hirschberg, I said, we probably should just bring back Mr. Truna now. It has nothing to do with grievances. It has nothing to do with union support. Believe me, if I cared about all that, we wouldn't have laid off somebody in the beginning. But we do what's best for the community, what's best for the taxpayers, and what's best for our township. And that was potentially preparing ourselves for a 40% state shared revenue reduction, which I'm happy to say, after talking with Ms. Janizek, we don't have any minus. We have a plus with state shared revenue, and it's looking to be a plus in October as well. So beside all that, after talking with Hirschberger, the best thing we thought to do would be to bring back Mr. Truna now before he finds another job, because Mr. Rudd will be retiring in roughly 2.5, 3 months. So that's why it's here tonight, because we only have one person that can dig a funeral currently right now, and one of the maintenance workers will be retiring in November. So that's why it's back on. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I look for a motion.
I have a question. You've talked to Adam and he's willing to come back?
Yes, he's willing to come back. The day after Labor Day would be, I think, September 8th, I think. The week after Labor, I think it's something like that.
And would he come back under the same pretense, wages, benefits, all of that?
Correct. Correct. And just so the board knows, we called Mr. Rudd and we asked Mr. Rudd, hey, would you be willing to sign an agreement that says you are going to leave in November? That way, when November rolls around and he says, hey, I want to work 6 more months, now we're not stuck. So that's why that document was signed. And one of the trustees called me and asked for that to be done. So everything we do is done through our labor attorney as well. In the beginning, when Mr. Rudd, we talked to Mr. Rudd and said, hey, here's the situation we have. We know you're talking about retiring, and we have a gentleman that's been here for 15 years and plans to be here for a long time. And we asked him if he's willing to go, and he said no. And so we moved on. There was no pressure. That was it. And I conveyed that to all the board members and the labor attorney, and everything was fine. We moved on. So if you ever have any questions or you have any thoughts, call me. I'm very available. You can get a hold of me 10 different ways. And I'm more than happy to sit down with you, any residents, and talk to you about a situation. Obviously, if it involves personnel, we have to be careful, but please make a 5-second phone call, and it'll save a lot of time and energy. But okay, yeah. So with no further comments, I'll look for a motion. Ms. Tinneberry? You're muted. You're muted.
Everybody keeps telling me that's how they like me, so. So before either I or anyone makes a motion, I'd like to know the date of return and the wages. I think that you need to stipulate, him coming back. It's not just about bringing him back.
Well, he's been laid off for roughly, Ms. Hirschberger, 2 months?
Roughly.
I don't think it'd be fair to him for any wage loss or any vacation loss. I think he should come back just as how he left.
What is that?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I believe the union
an hour
says that.
Something, 20, maybe $22, $23 an hour, something like that.
Okay, and what date?
September 8th.
Okay, I'll make the motion. I move that we hire Adam Truna beginning September 8th at the same wage and benefits that he was receiving when he stopped work 2 months ago.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
I think you will find that this is subject to the collective bargaining agreement and his right to be recalled. So everything that stated him coming back at the same wage level, benefits, et cetera, is already provided for within the collective bargaining agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Okay, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. Okay, we have a motion and support by Mr. Peroni. Any discussion, Mr. Montroy?
Did you support? Is that what
I
you said?
support.
So I just wanted to clarify that you said that there is like a documentation for Mr. Rudd.
Correct. Signed it. It's filed on the clerk's department.
Okay. That's the only question I had.
Okay, call the roll, please, Ms. Hirschberger.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye.
The motion passed 7-0. Mr. Steiner, how'd you say aye? I didn't even see your lips move last time you said it. When you said aye.
My mute's not on.
No. Okay, moving on to 8D, acceptance of the 2019 Assistance to Firefighters Grant. Chief Massingill.
Yeah, good evening. So in the last board meeting, we discussed the fact that we've been offered a couple of grants. We asked that we further explore the Assistance to Firefighters Grant and the amount, I believe it's around $98,000. We wanted to take a better look at Station 2, take a look at the building, have Mr. Jacobs come in, finish some preliminary estimates and give us a good idea before we took on the grant amount and our share of it, which is about 10% or $8,900. We just wanted to make sure that it would be money wisely spent. The building was evaluated. It was found to be sound structurally, even given its age. And nothing in the evaluation indicated that abandoning the building would be necessary. There's nothing that jumped out during their evaluation that said we shouldn't proceed down a path of remodeling or renovating that building for the long term. That being said, we also looked at some preliminary costs as far as a remodel versus a new building. And it's more than 2 to 1 the amount of money that it would cost for a new building versus a renovation in that building. He's still working on those numbers, and we'll have some better information down the road, but we're under a time crunch right now. We need to either accept or refuse this grant in this meeting because we only had 30 days to accept it from when it was given. So being that it was a 2 to 1 for the remodel versus a new building, being that the building is sound enough, it makes sense. We went out and solicited some sprinkler estimates. The estimates came back as falling within the amount that the grant work is going to be awarded. So we're requesting permission to accept the grant and move forward with this sprinkler work this time.
Okay, any comments or questions for Chief? Okay, seeing none, I look for a motion. Ms. Canterbury?
Is that the only?
Just one comment. Being that this document is a public document open to the public, I would just ask the chief to be a little more specific on the building and the use of the grant. I mean, you do have a paragraph talking about the sprinkler system and et cetera, but it doesn't really define where you were going to be using that. So in the future, if we all know that, but the public may not.
Yes, ma'am. My apologies. We included that the specifics of the grant in the last board package, but did not include it in this one. But moving forward, we will. Thank you.
No, I just didn't want you to think you're perfect. That's all.
Thank you for reminding me, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Ms. Canterbury? Did you make the motion?
No, but I will. I move that we accept the grant award in the amount of $89,909.91 with a match of $8,909.09 from the fire department budget for the purpose of renovations at the, what is it called, Lambertville Fire Hall or number 2 or
Station 2.
Station 2.
I'll support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Hershberger, could you call a roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Hershberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, motion passed 7-0. Item 8E, update on the Lewis Avenue Waterline Extension Project under the railroad tracks. I believe we have a caller in for that. Okay, guys, go ahead.
Good evening, board members. This is Tim Sergo. I represent the Monroe County Drain Commissioner, David Thompson. And I'm here tonight before you for the Lewis Avenue Water Main Extension. And update and request. We've had a very difficult time getting the new water line underneath the railroad tracks on Lewis Avenue at the water department to the north. And some of the difficulties have been there's so many pipelines involved, rock, poor soils. And as a result, we are having a cost overrun occurring on the project. And to get under the tracks and finish the project, we're estimating a $98,487 overrun, of which the South County Water would contribute 1/2 of that amount, basically $49,243, and we're asking a Bedford Township from the restricted water fund to contribute the other half of the funds to complete the project. Barry, would you like to comment on the difficulties of getting under the railroad?
Sure, I'd be glad to, Tim. This is Barry Bushman, Mannequin Smith. As Tim mentioned, yeah, we've encountered a variety of issues. The original alignment for the proposed water line was to cross the railroad tracks, come up the railroad track right away and cross it at 90 degrees to minimize the length of the bore crossing under the tracks. But early discussions with the Ann Arbor Railroad, which is now Watco, things have changed, and the railroad has taken a different perspective on working with the local agencies, and they were going to charge an annual permit cost, yearly fee for occupation of that water line under the railroad, which was fairly significant, and that would be, again, a yearly charge. So to avoid that, we had gone to a location that would have paralleled Lewis Avenue. However, once bid, we required the contractor to do what we call soft digs, which is to actually go down and expose all the utility lines. As part of that exposure, digging down, actually we do some exposure from various means, the non-destructive testing and location. It turns out, these 5 existing gas lines, various pipelines that exist out there are more like spaghetti. They run really all over the place, certainly not parallel. And trying to snake a new water line and put the bore pits in a location that would work proved not only difficult, but virtually impossible. We also at the same time realized we had a couple, as Tim mentioned, soil conditions. We have water stand on for about the top 7-8 feet. And then it turns out that the information a couple of the pipeline companies gave us was inaccurate in terms of depth, which required us to force this down 4 or 5 feet deeper than anticipated. So we ended up now, believe it or not, with a bore that's almost 20 feet below grade in clay and almost to the top of the surface of the rock. Anyways, to make a very long story short, what we've done over the last about 5 weeks, maybe even a little longer, we've been trying about everything to work with Salenbean, which is a very good local contractor. We've even gone as far as to try to get a different subcontractor for the boring that had originally promised some lower numbers, and then when his bids came in, turned out to be even higher than the existing sub. But we negotiated with the pipelines, get better clearance, a shallower clearance under their pipelines. We got above the rock. We worked with, we actually have contacts, luckily, with through John Chapala, who used to be chief engineer for the railroad, now works with Manick and Smith, actually negotiated with Watco to achieve a one-time permit fee versus an expensive annual permit. And we've got a one-time permit fee to occupy and go into the railroad of $13,000, which is included in the $98,000 that Tim mentioned. So anyways, long story short, we came up, the bore had to be longer to get through and beyond all the pipelines. And as a result, the length of the pipeline, the for excavation, Salenbean has to rent larger and bigger of the steel boxes that protect the bore pit area and the like, and also some dewatering that we were projecting resulted in the increase in cost. And we've done about everything we could in cooperation with the contractor, the drain office, and our office to brainstorm on this one. But what Tim and I are presenting is about the best we can do for you guys after several weeks of negotiation and pounding our heads. So that's what we have to present to you. It's not great, but it's the facts, and we're more than willing to answer any questions you guys have.
Any questions, comments from board members? Ms. Tinneberry?
Sorry. So this may seem like coming from a naive woman, but I don't really care. You're telling me there's no way to go from the golf course under Erie Road to the church and then back out onto Lewis Avenue. Is that right? Hello?
No, Nancy, I think what we're saying is we have to get under the railroad that is adjacent to, on a diagonal right there at the water department, and we can't seem to get the main line under the railroad.
I get, no. I understand everything that you said. I'm saying the golf course has water, and the people in that, you can't go take a connection. There's no other way except going under the railroad track. Is that exactly true?
That is
We have to
exactly
get
true.
no matter what. I mean, the railroad is a conflict no matter what. The same pipelines run under parallel the railroad tracks and run up those lines. And we do already have the water line as part of the church project extended to a point just north of the railroad tracks right now on Lewis Avenue.
Nancy?
Yes?
The reason it has to come from the water department is the 16-inch main. It's a very large diameter that will be able to service the northern part of Bedford Township. And that main is one of the largest we have in the system. And if we were to come off Erie Road, that's only an 8-inch or 12-inch main. I'm not sure the size exactly right now, but it would not be big enough to service. If this water line was to continue north and service Samaria, we would need that additional water.
Okay, I get it. I understand that now. Then Trudy, my question is, where's the money coming from? Is it the water fund or is it our general fund? If we approve this.
It would have to come from the water funds. That's what we have the money for. And I believe there's that much in there still, even though we've borrowed from that for special assessment districts. And the money's there for water projects, so it would make sense to use it for that.
There's roughly 280,000 in there right now, Nancy, in that fund, right, Trudy? That's about a correct amount.
That's what it shows, but we've borrowed from it and it doesn't show what we've borrowed out of that fund yet.
I understand that the fund has sufficient money. I'm just, the fund is for operation and maintenance. So if we have a collapse somewhere, we can't keep borrowing from a fund when I know that, the special assessments, that sort of thing get paid back, but this is a very old system, as Tim can attest to, and Barry as well. And if we ever had a collapse somewhere, I would hate to run the fund dry. So just a comment.
So with all the SADs the money's borrowed out from, there's well over $2 million in that account, probably more than $2.5 million. We're not borrowing against it for SADs. The account will just continue to rise over the years. So, Mr. Montry?
Yeah, so I have two questions, and I apologize if I'm curt with them. But am I to understand that this is I know that we're not being asked for $100,000 right now, with this being on the agenda in this way, and this being what we have. Update on water main under railroad track means coming and asking for $100,000. If that's the case, I don't even know what to think with that. Secondly, did we not sign the entirety of this project off to the Drain Commission already? Anybody, those are questions.
Sergo?
Yeah, this is Tim Sergo. Yes, we signed an agreement that you were to pay or contribute to help getting under the railroad. That's always been a problem for providing residents of Bedford water. The railroad has been a great obstacle. So providing this water under the railroad is good for the township, it's good for the water department, and it's good for the community as a whole. And yes, you did sign over the current project to us, the agreement does say, that we had an estimate to do the work and that things usually go as planned. In this case, there were unforeseen circumstances, and therefore that's where we're requesting to come back and ask for additional funds.
And just as a clarification, Mr. Montry, the Drain Commission is, just so we're clear, the total cost is $98,000 and some odd dollars, but the Drain Commission is willing or wanting to share the cost at a 50-50 split. So it's a $49,000 and change a request.
Well, it's their project, so I would hope so. So that's the answers is yes and yes. That this is a request for $100,000, or well, I guess $50,000, and this is not our project.
Well, it is your project in a sense because you committed initially to help provide water underneath the railroad track.
So, well, if I thought we were getting an update on this, I would have, if I would have known what was actually being brought to us, I would have looked up that agreement and seen what that agreement actually said. But if I remember correctly, I thought, and I have no idea because I don't have it in front of me, this is a blind side to me. I don't know what that agreement said, but if my understanding of that agreement was we signed off on this project, giving it to the Drain Commission. So I'm very confused right now.
I apologize. I don't have the agreement in front of me, but usually in those agreements, they state that the projected project cost is X, Y, and Z, and that there could be additional costs incurred. We're trying to provide this service to the community, and it is a very important part or piece of the puzzle to get water to Samaria.
But to clarify, Mr. Supervisor, tonight is just an update. You're not seeking a vote, correct?
No, we would like to have authorization and approval because we apologize for not having the numbers, but we have been working frantically up and through Friday to get the numbers. The project has kind of been on hold now for the last 5 to 6 weeks because of all the problems with this bore. And Mr. Bushman and Maggie Smith have done a great job. We've worked through all the issues, and we could come back to a later board meeting, but it's going to push it back. The intention was always to have the water flowing north of the railroad tracks for September the 1st. We did not make that deadline. We have tentatively a commitment from the contractors to start on Friday if we get approval tonight.
Well, this has been on our agenda this is the third time this has been on our agenda with zero update, saying that we're getting an update, and the final update is not an update whatsoever. It's a request for $100,000.
That is correct in essence.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about coming to the last board meeting, but we decided not to because we didn't have hardly any of the answers. We still weren't sure how to get under the tracks and what the cost was going to be. So to come before you and say, we had conveyed to the supervisor's office that we were having problems, but to come and say, we have a problem, but we don't know how much it's going to cost, we didn't think was going to be very productive of your time.
I was told last week, Craig, that there might not be a cost sharing. So it's been such a moving target. And I just made a call yesterday, or the day before, is this going to stay on the agenda? So it's been, like they said, way up and down. And dealing with Salem Bean, I know they've, it's been all over the map. So that's why there was no information given, because there was no information to give. And now last week it was, where there might not be extra money for the project. They got to figure it out. And then it wasn't. So, what were you saying, Barry?
I was just going to say, I wish we had a better solution. we've done everything in our power, including negotiating with the railroad and coming up with some agreements with them that were able to be achieved and lower some overall cost, and wish we had better news. We thought we might have better news with a different subcontractor that unfortunately we went rabbit hole that didn't work out for us and wasted some time for us. But the bottom line, this is as good as we're going to get. There's really no other alternative given what we have to work with. The price is the price, and it unfortunately isn't going to change. We've tried every option that we could possibly think of with both agencies. So the price is the price. And
now, why are you guys asking us for money, though? That's the question. Why is the Drain Commission requesting money from the township?
I think when this project started, we had talked about the township made an initial commitment to try to get water under the tracks because it always has been difficult. That's why it's not been done, because it has been so difficult in the past. And the township offered that that's what they have a water fund for this kind of circumstance to help the community. And we put it out for the bids with the best information we had at the time, but it was not capable of doing the job for the money that came in based on further investigations. And as a result, Barry said it correctly. This is the price. This is what we need to finish the project.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yeah.
Another component to this is just to remind the board, and Craig, you're right. This is a county agency drain commissioner project for the benefit of the system, the water system, specifically this part of the system that serves Bedford Township. The township made a commitment and has already paid a significant sum of money to fulfill that commitment. Bridgepoint Church, as part of its reconstruction budget after the fire loss, also made a significant commitment, signed a contract, and has already paid that amount. Tim, refresh my memory. I don't remember exactly what Bridgepoint paid, but I just wanted to make the point it's not free to them. And as Tim stated, the whole point of extending under the railroad bed is to provide service in the future up along Lewis Avenue, then west along M151 or Samaria Road, and also potentially if the folks decide to engage in a special assessment district going east down Erie Road, capturing Pickard and that area, and then coming back up to Lewis Avenue. So it's probably not wise to delay the choice, because as contractors go, and as Mr. Sergo said, they have a contractor who has given us a price, and the contractor is willing and able to start Friday. If you delay the vote, that might not be the case, and Tim probably should speak to that. That's all I had to say. I just wanted to make the point, this is not free to the church. They will benefit, but they're paying for that benefit.
So Tim and Barry, so basically when you put out a project out for bid, because I'm used to construction projects, when a project's out for bid and somebody bids on that project and it changes, the project changes, that means they misbid it and they have to eat that cost. In this circumstance, why is it? Because you had a contractor bid a project and now you have some unknowns. Why does that come back to the owner? Why wouldn't it be for the contractor? Hey, you bid the project, you know.
I can answer that, Mr. Supervisor. The way we bid projects, whether it's roadway projects, utility projects, and the like, unlike if you say somebody like, okay, here's the driveway, here, I want you to pour me a new driveway. Okay, it's 60 feet long, 18 feet wide, and okay, it's a known commodity. We bid utility projects by unit or items, unit price, unit items. 50 feet of storm sewer, 100 feet of under drain, 500 tons of asphalt. So if the project goes higher or lower, we pay the contractor based on actual work he completes, which includes the cost of his material as well as the labor and materials that he puts in forth on this. On this project, the length of the bore increased substantially, not to mention the fact that when you have a condition known as a change condition, once again, with pipelines being substantially lower than the information we really had from provided originally, it resulted in the contractor having to buy or rent, in this case, different boxes for the additional depth of the bore pit and the length of it. So it's all based on unit prices. It's a good question, and it helps, but I'm trying to explain how we typically bid jobs is based on length of the bore and the depth of the bore pit and some change conditions, which is fair for the contractor. And although it could have resulted, if it had been shorter, for instance, it would have resulted in a cost savings to us. So it's the way we typically bid all types of public works projects.
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor, I checked my notes. The church contributed $369,000 to this project, which essentially was to run the water line north of the railroad bed up to the church to support its new infrastructure. So again, not without a cost to the church. That's just that's a fact that should be made known to all the board members and the public.
Okay. Any more board members have any questions or comments? You know, just I want everybody to keep in mind, and I know I've said this a lot of times, this project is separate from the church. This project is just to run water under the railroad tracks for future expansion. Yes, you do have a church there, but I will tell you this now. I don't know if we delay this. Trudy, when's our next board meeting? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Barry, could we lose the contractor that's working on it?
Well, certainly they have a lot of work. We're at the end of the construction season, plus obviously trying to, as Tim mentioned earlier, originally the completion date was intended to be, was to the extent that we were trying to provide water to the church so they could ultimately complete that project, even though it wasn't designed to be dedicated for the church, but as part of the church doing that work to have a final CFO, we need to get that water line up there. But yeah, I mean, you know, the contractor Selling Bean's extremely busy. He's got it fit in. If we delay it 2 weeks, I'm not sure when we're going to get him back exactly.
Tim, from the Drain Commissioner standpoint, what are you going to do if the township votes no?
That's a good question. I don't know at this point.
I mean, pretty deep into the project.
Yeah, I know one thing, we will not have water anytime soon. Based on, we'll have to try to figure out where we go from here.
All board members, what's the pleasure of the board?
Is the Drain Commission prepared to go 60-40 on it?
I cannot make that kind of negotiation. That's up to the Drain Commissioner. We sat down with different representatives, and we decided that it was a benefit to the water department, and it was also still part of the township's obligation that they committed to get under the tracks.
Well, we've literally had nothing presented to us whatsoever. So I don't even know what's being proposed, honestly. I have nothing in front of me saying what is being proposed. So I don't know that's why I'm asking the question.
Well, the numbers that are final as of yesterday are to finish the project is $98,487. One half of that amount would be $49,243 to be additionally approved by the township to come from their water fund.
So Craig, the more information you would need then, and same thing with Mr. Clements, is the contract that we're in with them. Would we be looking for a way to say, hey, we don't owe you anything, or is, I mean,
I just would have preferred something. I would have preferred anything more than nothing.
Mr. Steiner?
Mr. Sergo or Mr. Bushman, what is the total price of this project?
Well, I don't have
It's
that
gotta be
right off
approaching-
my- that handy?
It's about 600,000.
600.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Are you
That was
talking about the total don't include Bridgepoint Church. He's talking about the total.
Right. Right. The part to get under the church, to get under the railroad was 164,000. That was the initial township commitment. In round numbers.
Okay, so 164, and we're looking for almost another 100 on top of that.
No, we're only looking for 50, or 49,
Well,
243. Because
right, but I mean,
the
it's
water
100, but it's 100 total, close to 100 total.
Correct. Yeah, it's over $250,000 to get under the railroad track.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the contracts that we get that come through, and not just yours or anybody's, have generally a 10% overrun clause. And even at 10%, we'd only be looking at 16.4.
When we put those estimates and collected the money, there was no 10% extra included.
So there was no contingency on the back end of that contract?
No, because the contract is written that if there was an overage, we'd come back to you and request that. In most cases, these projects run very smooth. They're very straightforward. Water lines tend to only be 5 to 7 feet deep. We tend to do these kind of projects all the time and be right in budget. In this particular case, this railroad has provided a lot of difficulties for the engineers.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, I don't think anybody wants to slow the project up anymore. The project's taken long enough as it is. But I think the problem is no time or information to make a decision was the problem. And then that's kind of that's where I'm at least.
Hey, real quick question.
It wouldn't be as hard of a decision to make. It wouldn't be as hard of a decision to make maybe if it had any information.
Is there an annual fee to be under the tracks? I've heard that rumor a little bit. Can you clear that up? Some people are thinking there's an annual fee to be under the tracks with the railroad.
Tim stated that they got that down to the one-time fee.
Yeah, Barry Bushman did that for us.
Okay,
and it is a one-time fee.
Okay, so the one-time fee is how much?
13, a little 12,000, like $900, somewhere in that. Yeah.
That's a one-time fee.
Yeah. Compared to, we were able to negotiate. We went right to the current president of the Ann Arbor, who's managing that on behalf of Watco, and got a special concession.
Barry, where would that have been if we'd have been stuck with an annual fee?
Boy, I wish I had that right in front of me, Mr. Steiner. I don't have that right in front, but it was my recollection. I can get you the exact numbers later.
I mean, just an idea. I mean, was it 1,000 a year, 2,000 a year?
I think it was more than 1,000, probably less than 5,000.
Okay, so in the low thousands per year. And was that in perpetuity or time frame?
Yeah. Yeah, in perpetuity.
So that could have been forever. Even if it was $1,000 being forever, sure adds up.
It was going to be $12,000 annually.
12
That's-
annually.
Thank you.
That's the information that I have.
That's the number I recollect too. I was hesitant to say it, but that's the number I heard a few times as well.
Well, then that's extremely significant. We're basically taking what we would have paid annually and getting a one-time fee out of it based on the negotiations.
Yeah, we're effectively cutting ourselves a 4-year loan.
Okay.
I'd also like to say that this has been attempted many, many times by our residents in that area, and the railroad tracks has always stopped it. That's why I was for this project, because of the 5 or 6 times people have tried to pull water on the other side of Erie, and the railroad tracks was so expensive that the people would back out of the special assessment district.
Keep in mind too, that the more users a system has, the better it is for a system. And the expansion of the system is within Bedford Township, and it will stay within Bedford Township. And there's already a demonstrable need for public water north of the railroad tracks, running up Lewis Avenue, branching to the east, down Erie along Pickard within that neighborhood, and then branching to the west down Samaria Road. There is a demonstrable need, and I believe, as Trudy stated, that once we're under the railroad, we'll have many more users, which will ultimately benefit the system as a whole. It's for the public health, safety, and welfare of the entire system. So
I don't think one person disagrees with that on this board. That's why we're this far along in this project. I think the only frustration is what Mr. Montry and Mr. Clemens have stated, but like Mr. Bushman and Thurgood stated, there was very little information up until yesterday. I just kept putting it back on the agenda. There was no information. It was all over the map because of what they were dealing with. Correct, Barry?
That's correct. We were hoping for different information, and it wasn't until Friday that we obtained, late Friday, that we obtained some final numbers.
Yeah, and I don't think the frustration is with Mr. Bushman or Mr. Sergo. I think it's we're sitting here making a large decision a bit in the dark, except for our recollection, which goes back to a running point that Nancy has made for meeting after meeting about having appropriate information disclosed in the board packages. So to confirm, Ms. Hirschberger, we do in fact have the money in the water fund, correct?
Yes, Krista and I did speak about it, and we do have it.
Yes.
Okay. And I do recall that in the contract that funds would come back to us.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, from the beginning, I've been against this project, so I find myself shocked that I'm going to make a motion to approve the $49,243, which is half the cost overrun, the total number given to us by Tim Sergo of the Drain Commission, and I believe that he'll hold that firm. Because in light of the money we've spent already, it makes no sense to allow this project to fail. And also in light of the fact that the clerk and treasurer have acknowledged that we have the money in the fund.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and supported by Ms. Hirschberger. Discussion, board members? Okay, seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinberry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
No, and I'd like the minutes to reflect that it has nothing to do with the project itself and everything to do with the blindsided nature of this agenda item.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-1.
Mr.
Tim,
Peroni,
Barry, appreciate you guys being on.
Mr. Peroni, just
Thank
can I
you.
make a quick comment for Mr. Sergo, Mr. Bushman?
Stay on, guys.
Jerry and Tim, I know that I believe what I'm hearing is, the process was just as frustrating for you. But going forward, if we ever have any kind of projects, even if something happened like this where you didn't have full disclosure of all the information readily available, if you have it ready for even the day of the board meeting, at least get that to the board, to the clerk, and get it distributed in our hands prior to the meeting, so we at least have something to look at, so we don't question the contract or question the value in the process.
Glad to do that.
Yep, we will.
Okay, thank you, guys. Okay, comments from the public, comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual.
There's an added agenda.
We got 8F. Sorry about that. We got 8F, opening of Township Hall. Ms. Tinneberry, and is Chief Maxingale still on? Adam Maxingale, you on still?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tinneberry, go ahead.
I'm beginning with a motion. I move that the board authorize the opening of the Township Hall Government Center to the public effective Tuesday, September 8th at 8 a.m. for all services, including all public meetings, putting in place social distancing, masks, temperature gauges, and any other requirement needed to maintain safety for the public and employees. My reasoning for this motion is that I'm tired of asking when the people's place of business will be open, so I am making this motion tonight. Months ago, the board authorized the purchase of safety plexiglass, hand sanitizers, masks, protocol for social distancing, sanitation spray, cleaning supplies, gloves, thermometers, and anything else the employees felt were necessary for opening up the Township Hall. All of those things were purchased. They have never been used. The hall is still closed. There is no explanation when I am asked why. I have no answer for these people. We held a vote in-person election, and we're preparing to hold another one in November. We opened the parks, the schools are open, universities are open with conditions, funeral homes are open and conduct services, factories are open. We see doctors and dentists in their office. Restaurants are open for dine-in services. Markets, shopping centers, and stores are all open. Hairdressers and barbers are open. Banks, insurance agencies, churches are open. Bars are open. Golf courses are open. Bowling alley, the bowling alley is packed. Campgrounds are packed. And other township offices throughout the state are open for all services, including board meetings. What reason could there possibly be for not allowing the public taxpayers to enter their own building? I am certain each of you have participated in one or all of the above activities. Bedford employees are in place, but the public is barred from entering their own building. This building was not built for you, for the employees. It was built to provide a place for the public to be served. The taxpayers built a nice place for you all to work, but now you are preventing them from using their own building. This, in my opinion, is irresponsible governing. We are paid to provide service to the public. And finally, the 10-person rule set by the governor is not for public meetings, it's for social gatherings. This meeting is by no means a social gathering, and the Township Hall becomes, and if the Township Hall becomes one, then you, as officers of the building, have the authority to ask them to socialize elsewhere. The governor's executive order number 154 in the first section states, meetings of the public body may be held remotely. It doesn't say shall, it doesn't say should. And the call-ins tonight, especially the one with Joyce Blanton, it's evidence that we have problems with having our public meetings, and there's absolutely no reason why we cannot be meeting together in the boardroom and the public cannot be coming to use their facility.
will agree with you there. The board meetings are extremely frustrating with the difficulties we have on a pretty regular basis. But Chief Massengill, how much is
That's a motion. That's a motion on the floor. There. Do we have a second?
I'll support that.
Okay, we
Thank
have a
you.
motion support with Mr. Montry. Discussion. Chief, what has changed with the governor's order since we've shut down? And I don't know if you can answer that on the spot, but
I'm not sure if we can, I'm not sure if we could, the orders have changed a lot.
This meeting
If
has
you
to be
mean
done
si-
by 10.
if you mean that, if you mean what's changed since we adopted the policies and went with a soft opening a number of weeks ago, I'd have to review, but largely most of what we're doing right now, I should say that what we're doing right now, or what the township government center is doing right now, as far as compliance, is meeting the executive orders to the best of my knowledge.
okay.
How,
Ms. Tenenberry?
however, the 10-person rule doesn't apply to us in opening our building. And also the public meetings, when it says may meet, it may meet remotely. It doesn't say they may not meet in person. So, I mean, there's nothing in the governor's order that prevents us from opening the township hall. As I said, other township halls are open and they're not being fined, so.
I wish Chief would have known about this, because I know in the beginning, if we were gonna open, we had to have a full-time attendant at the door. I don't know if that's changed, because banks have an attendant at the door. You know, that's a question I don't think Chief can answer tonight. I mean, are we gonna have to go to have an attendant at the door and hire somebody?
Everyone that comes in the building has to be screened in some fashion, so it would be up to the board. In my opinion, maybe Mr. Goldsmith could help me out, or help you out with this. But being that everybody that comes in the door has to be screened, there just has to be a process to make sure everyone that comes in and out is screened. It's being done now on an appointment basis, so I would assume that we'd have to adjust what we are doing as a township to make sure that if the doors were unlocked and the public could come in and out, that we ensure that everyone gets screened as they come in and out.
Ms. Tenenberry?
We have 20 employees on staff. Everyone could take an hour or a half an hour and vary it throughout the day. I mean, I'm sorry, but are we trying to find ways to keep the public out, or trying to find ways to keep them in or let them come in? And our bank does not have an attendant at the door.
It's up to the board. I know we've been closed by appointment only for the last couple months now, and I'm not sure it'd be very responsible of us to just open up tonight out of the blue without giving Chief at least till the next board meeting to study up on what the orders actually are, so we can have the proper protocols in place. I'm all for opening, but you know, the board has gone through a lot to close it and keep it open by appointment only. I'm just not so sure it's a great idea to just make a motion to open up tonight without having some facts in place with Chief. Mr. Montry?
Chief, what's you mentioned the screening. What is that like for, like governmental buildings specifically, or?
I want to be careful because I haven't reviewed closely the executive order, so I don't want to misspeak and give the board any bad information.
I didn't know.
But generally speaking, at the time we developed the policy, there's a login process. So should anybody identified as being sick inside the building, we could go back and provide the health department information for who was in the building on those days or during those times. The screening process and different, to the best of my knowledge, different buildings or different government centers are handling it differently, whether it be just a questionnaire that is being filled out. As I've traveled around the county, there's been a questionnaire that you fill out, or some of them are taking temperatures. It varies based on what the policy is. So I don't want to claim to be an expert, but I know that when we developed ours, we made sure that we met every provision that was set forth in the executive orders at that time.
I was wondering if there was something like specific, just to Ms. Tenberry's point, like every single thing that she named, which is literally everything besides Bedford Township Hall, that you don't, that I know of. I haven't been screened for the grocery store or a restaurant or the bowling alley, or, you know what I mean? Like anything that I haven't been screened for any of that. So I didn't know if there was something specific why we would have to, or if I'm not trying to put you on the spot on it. I was just curious.
I wouldn't want to claim to be an expert on anything else. I did, when we were working on the policy, I did read up on the government center and the provisions there, but that's pretty lengthy reading. I didn't read up on other businesses or anything that really was generally unimportant for us.
That's fine. It would have changed by the time you got finished reading it anyway.
Mr. Supervisor, I can give you at least some food for thought if you would like. So I have been to several units of government within Monroe County. As the chief said, different ones do it differently. For example, some units of government require you to fill out and sign a questionnaire. Have you, for instance, have you flown domestically or to a foreign country within the last X days? Do you have an atypical cough? Do you have a fever? They scan you to see what your temperature is, and then they ask you to record that and sign the document before they allow you to enter. They demand that you wear a mask at all times when you're within the facility. So that's an example. You, as a township board, have an obligation to protect your employees. That is folded somewhere within the governor's executive order. So you have to provide a safe environment for your employees who, as a condition of their employment, need to be there and perform their jobs. As some, as a condition of their employment, need to be at public meetings that are held at the township hall, should you decide to reactivate that. With respect to gatherings, it's Executive Order 160 that limits it to 10 people if the gathering is indoors. Quite frankly, the governor could have been more specific when she drafted and adopted the executive order, specifically Executive Order 160. It doesn't specifically say that units of government cannot meet indoors if they have more than 10 people. But what it does say, and when read collectively, what it does say, 160, is that it doesn't limit it just to social gatherings. It limits it states gatherings. So you'd have to apply your own definition to a gathering. I would submit that a board meeting would be a gathering, or could be construed or defined by some to be a gathering. So if you have more than 10 people assembled at a board meeting, that could constitute a violation of the executive order. When read in tandem with the governor's executive order, which specifically allows public meetings to be done as we are doing them on the Microsoft platform or the Zoom platform, that seems to suggest that that's a preferred method of meeting in public, at least at this time. But she doesn't specifically call that out or say that. So I can't speak to what other units of government are doing or why they're doing it. Some are smaller and don't have many people attend their public meetings. Bedford Township, when people are able to attend, typically we have a pretty fair number of people in our boardroom attending public meetings. So
can everybody mute their lines other than Phil, please?
What's that?
Is everybody muted other than Phil? We're getting a lot of feedback. Yeah, I guess they are.
Okay, so those are some considerations that you need to you just need to think about those. I think technically a strong argument can be made that the governor is still limiting gatherings, not just social gatherings, to 10 people. You have to take into consideration that you have to take steps to protect your employees that, as a condition of their employment, have to attend those public meetings. You have to take into consideration that you have an obligation to protect your employees on a day-to-day basis that work within the Township Hall. So if you open up for business, you need to employ those safeguards. That's what I have to say on the subject.
Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
Well, they've opened the parks, and I've driven by parks, and there's more than 10 people. She's opened the schools, and there's certainly more than 10 people in my grandchildren's schoolroom. They've opened funeral homes. I've seen many people at the funeral home. We drove by the bowling alley tonight, and there's got to be, 300 people sitting in chairs out in the parking lot, and the volleyball things are closed. So, I mean, those are social gatherings, and nobody's saying anything about that. Nobody's preventing that. The people in this township have a right to utilize the building that they have built. And I just certainly I'm all for protecting the employees. That's why I said we're using all the safeguards that we've already purchased and put in place, the social distancing, the max, we got X's in the floor. We're not unique in terms of everybody here can't do business with the public when all of these, we drove to Grand Rapids this weekend, and I'm telling you, we passed hundreds of campers going to campgrounds. They were packed as we went past them. If we turn this down, you can turn it down. It's fine with me. But then when I get people asking me in the store or on the street or my neighborhood, I'm going to have them call those of you who decided you don't want to open this building up to the public.
I'll say this, Steve. I know you're busy, super busy. If the board did decide to move forward, I would commit to working with Chief diligently and Ms. Hirschberger and Ms. Janizek to do it safe. If the board voted, we would work our butts off to get it done. I'm sure we could do it. The last time the board asked me to move forward with it, we got it done in 4 hours. And the chief worked on a plan for a week or so, and we were able to do it safely. And I think if we opened up, we're going to run into some snags, but I think if the board approved it tonight, we could work hard on and work forward to make sure it's done in a safely manner. I am not for putting a full-time attendant at the door. I don't know who's going to regulate masks. I don't know all that. But we'll figure it out. Chief, is that something you feel comfortable working with me on, or you're muted?
I serve at the board's pleasure. If you want me to work on it, then I can certainly go back through and update and take a look at it. So it's completely up to the board.
Mr. Clemens?
Well, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate mail for saying what I'm about to say, but quite honestly, unless the 3 full-timers in concert with Chief all agree to do this, it's going to fail. Because we're either going to have to staff it and put a person there by which we either have to agree to hire or agree to assign, or the 3 of you are going to figure out a way to rotate staff through there. So I know as a trustee, I need to have some idea on what that looks like. Just saying we're going to do it, and then the 3 of you respectfully don't see eye to eye on how to get it done, and there's not the flexibility, that does nothing except for expose us to potential liability and problems, and we're going to fail before we even get started.
Mr. Steiner?
And just to reiterate Mr. Clemens' comment, I clearly stated probably 2 months ago that I didn't have any problems with the exception of if we could not meet 100% of the protocols and guidelines that are set forward, then we can't open. If we can meet everything to the standard, but the one thing is, I don't think there's any way around that we would have to have someone to be able to monitor that front door, and we have to decide what that protocol is. And I know many companies are using the temperature checks. They're using the basic questionnaire of, have you had any types of symptoms as related to COVID? Have you done the travel? Things like that. It's only 3 or 4 questions and a temperature check, and then they have to sign it. And the big thing is, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Chief Massengill said, if someone were to be found that they were positive at that point, we have to be able to talk to people that have possibly been in contact in that same time frame. So that's part of that protocol, why that has to happen. Other than that, I mean, if we could meet, and what you said, Mr. Clements, I can sit here, you can sit here, Mr. Montry, we can all sit here and make our comments, but we're not the ones that are there full time. It's 3 full-timers that would be tasked to make sure that everything is taken care of in the protocols.
I can say this right now. We do not have an employee to put at that front desk. I know Trudy is swamped and getting ready to ramp up for election. She can't put an energy deck at the front door. We have bare minimum staff. So I know that could be an issue if we have to manage with somebody at the front door. Ms. Tinberg?
I'm sorry, but that is, okay, first I'm going to say I'm willing to come in on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday and do my part so that the public can be admitted to their building. However, excuse me, but you can't tell me that somebody doesn't have a half hour here and there to go in there. You told me yourself, you take phone calls from home. Can you take phone calls from the front desk? You're still working and doing your job, taking phone calls. Let's think outside the box here. I know that every employee that comes to work here every day, your ordinance people, the people upstairs, everybody can step aside for a half an hour and take a time at the front desk. I'm willing to come in on my days off and sit at the front desk or at the front door. Now, there's the answer to your problem. Now tell me why you don't want to open up. The public thinks you don't want to open up because you don't want to do your job.
Well, first of all, we don't even know if we need an attendant. So we should have probably given the chief a little bit of heads up. So we know he's been updating it for us for the last 2 months. So we probably see where we're at. Maybe we don't have to have an attendant. Like you just said, there's not an attendant anywhere you're going to, so why's the township got to do it? Mr. Steiner, did you have your hand up? Okay.
No, that was.
Well, I would just say, I'm sorry, Rick. I was going to say, I agree philosophically with Nancy. We need to get open. We need to take the lead on returning to a safe, normalized form of business. At the same time, my job is also to protect this township from unnecessary lawsuits. We're in the middle of what's likely going to be one of the most contentious political seasons ever. And if any of us think that someone's not going to put in anonymous phone calls in what they either saw factually or what they're saying just to stir up trouble, I think that's a bit naive. And so as we go into this, we're either going to figure it out and execute it well and protect our neighbors, or we're going to go into it, do it very poorly, and subsequently create a problem. And so, like I said, I want it open, but I'm a trustee. I have a floundering business that, I'm having to spend a lot of time with. So, I don't have the luxury of saying I can come sit in on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. But I do believe that somebody can work out a schedule where a half hour to an hour a day, somehow we can make this work. I agree, but I'm not hearing that consensus. And so it makes it difficult for me to vote in favor of it, because I don't feel like that's really the will of the board.
I called the question.
That, when I'm in the office, that if somebody comes to the door, I, can't run out there. But I mean, for me to go sit at the front door, you know what I mean?
I called the question. I called the question, which ends the discussion.
Okay. Could you call the roll, please, Ms. Hirschberger?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Clements?
Based on the question being called, I vote no.
Mr. Steiner?
You're muted, Mr. Steiner.
Nay, for the fact that we don't have everything in place and agreed upon.
Ms. Janusik.
I vote no because we don't have everything in place either. And I do want the building open. It's just, I want everything to be in place.
Hershberger votes no for the same reason. The question was called. I didn't have time to discuss, and I don't feel like this was enough time to get everything in place. And I really don't have time to put someone at the door with almost 7,000 applications coming in. Mr. Peroni.
No, for the same reasons, but I will ask that this be put on the next agenda, and I'll be working with Chief diligently over the next week. If I can agree with, have agreements with the clerk and the treasurer, that we'll work together of a plan to get this thing open and get it put on the next agenda. And if the board decides to at that point, at least you'll have all the information in front of you. Ms. Januzak?
I agree. We can work together. My only concern right now is tax deadline is in 2 weeks, and my department is, as you know, shorthanded, and with the drive-through, you know, we're doing everything through the drive-through, and when we open up, I'm good with opening up, but I can't have one of my staff sit at the front door, you know, manning it, because I have employees that are not even taking lunches to make sure that the stuff is getting handled in a timely manner.
Well, the bottom line is whoever sits at the front door, I mean, a good point was made a while back that you can't put somebody at the front door that doesn't have health insurance. We can't put a seasonal person at the front door with no benefits and then they get sick. We're putting them at a big risk. So it's going to have to be somebody that, an employee that's got health insurance. And, you know, so I don't know. Either way, the motion has failed 5-2. I will work with Chief. We'll get it put on the next agenda. Ms. Hershberger, could you make sure this is on the next agenda?
Yes,
I'll work with Chief. I'll work with Krista and Trudy to get it on the next, and we'll have everything in place for a good discussion to be had. Okay, so moving on to comments from the public. Okay, Mr. Montry.
Hans Christian Andersen wrote a book entitled The Emperor's New Clothes. In reference to agenda item 8F, I would highly suggest that literary work. I would also like to welcome Mr. Miller to the finance position, and I would again, I would like to comment on agenda item 8E in regards to the Drain Commission and the engineers in regards to the way that agenda item was presented. I believe that is highly unprofessional and completely unacceptable. And I would like the minutes to reflect it. That's all.
Ms. Tinneberry?
No comment. I mean, the reason for not being able to open up is, I mean, we've had this stuff for months. So you had plenty of time to plan long before the tax bills went out or came due and long before these elections came to pass. So, you know, somebody needs to, you know, put a nail on your chairs to get you to move. And I'm just, I'm very frustrated that, that this board, I'm in favor of protecting the employees. It's not about protecting the employees. I hate to, if I see any of you at a restaurant, at a bowling alley, at a campground, at any place where there's crowds, more than 10 people.
Mr. Steiner?
First thing, I could never probably say as well as Mr. Goldsmith did in his opening prayer. Our thoughts and prayers with the Keene family regarding Joe Keene. Talk about a dedicated community member. That man spent more minutes, hours, days, months than many of us would ever think about. And a lot of what he did for this community was all on his own personal time. A lot of volunteerism and working with the fire department, coming up through the many years there as well. And then he was also a very good employee of the township hall at one point as well. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the Keene family. And again, Joe was a great man to have around. And it's a great loss. Just want to give you a quick update. My comment, I was not at the last board meeting. Unfortunately, I had a last minute change of circumstance, so I had to miss the meeting. I wanted to say that the roundabout decision was an accurate decision, and to move that out and search for grant in a couple more years and see where we proceed from that point. Mr. Miller, I want to welcome him aboard as well. And again, I'm committed to working with Mr. Miller and the rest of the township board, and of course, the clerk's department, which has the main responsibility for Mr. Miller. I'm confident that he's going to do well, and I think the biggest thing is we just need to make sure that our expectations are clearly defined for Mr. Miller, and I believe he will succeed. I think that's all for this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Steiner. Mr. Clemens?
I'm going to echo a little bit about what Mr. Steiner said about Joe Keene. I don't want to repeat all of it. There are two things I had written down. The two things that I will miss most about Joe is he had an infectious smile. Anybody that knew Joe knew that when he smiled, he could light up a room. And probably his laugh was the other thing that I think a number of people will miss. He, as Rick said, he has done a lot for this community. His son continues to do a tremendous amount for this community. And I think it's just fitting that we recognize someone who truly is dedicated to public service. Circling back, I think frustration might be the word of the night. Everybody is frustrated. It's probably the one word that our entire country could agree on right this minute. Is everybody's frustrated over something. And regardless of what angle you come at your frustration from, reality of it is that when we wake up tomorrow, that frustration is still going to be sitting right there in front of us. What I had in my notes was I wanted to just remind people that public schools are going to be opening in the next couple of weeks. For Bedford, it'll be next week. I think our superintendent has done as great a job as anyone could do in the circumstance of trying to prepare a school system to do what's being asked. And so I would just hope that everybody would remember that we're all making different choices for our children. We're all doing what we feel like is right for our family and for our community. And now would be a fantastic time if we all pause before we fire off either that nasty gram in written form or maybe we decide to speak to something that if we pause for a moment, we might think twice about it. With regard to town hall, if we look back through the meeting notes, the last time we had this vote, I voted to open town hall. And tonight I only voted against it because of the reasons that I've already stated, and I'm not going to waste everybody's time. I would just say this. I think people have a fair expectation that we lead. And I think we have to make every attempt to get that done. And Mr. Peroni, I appreciate you stepping up and saying you will champion this in the next 2 weeks. I absolutely believe Trudy and Krista when they say that, they're going to take a look and do what they can. And I respectfully know that they're both very busy. It's a rough time of year for government, particularly given that we are shorthanded. The last thing I'll say is this. I try to be very careful as a trustee that I don't come off preachy. My thoughts, I'm an elected leader of my neighbors. I'm not, their conscience or their soul. But there's a song out right now by Tim McGraw called Humbled and Kind. And if you haven't heard it, I would encourage you to Google the lyrics. Given where our country is these days, it's some good words to live by. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. The only thing I would disagree with what you said was being shorthanded. We're not shorthanded at the township, and I don't know if you meant it that way. We're shorthanded if we have to add positions. That's where I would agree with you. We don't have the staff to add positions. Could we do what Ms. Tinderberry is talking about? Possibly, but we would need all hands on deck to do it. We couldn't just do it with a couple of departments. So, Ms. Janizek?
I would also like to say something. I'd like to send my deepest sympathies out to the Keene family. Joe was a wonderful man. He did a tremendous amount of things for this community, and he for many, many years, and he will definitely be missed by a lot of people. I'd like to also welcome Mr. Miller on and look forward to working with him. The last thing I have to say is that tax bills are due September 14th. You can pay them here at the Township Hall. First Merchants Bank and Temperance accepts them. Fifth Third Bank in Lambertville accepts them. And if you have any questions, just call my office, and anyone in the department will be able to assist you with any of your questions. And that's it.
Thank you. Hirschberger?
I also want to send my condolences to Joe Keene's family. I was proud to say he was a friend, and he will be missed greatly. Also, I'm ecstatic to welcome Mr. Miller. It's been a long few months, and I'll be happy to turn these reins over to someone else for a while. We are still accepting applications. I want to remind the residents that you are getting duplicates and triplicate applications from different organizations. They may have my name on them, but they are not coming from the township. They're coming from other organizations. So please give us a call and we can look you up. It just takes a few minutes and make sure that you're all set for that absentee ballot. Right now, we are almost to 7,000 applications for ballots. So we have quite a few coming in. Lastly, on opening the township hall, I'm all for opening. That would be fine for me. But as far as setting one of my office workers up in the front, even for a half an hour, would be very, very difficult at this point. We are overwhelmed with the many applications coming in and the process it takes to do them. And we have been doing elections since February of this year. It has been nonstop. We had a March election, an August election, and now I have a November election. So we have been in election mode pretty much this entire time. But if Nancy's willing to sit there for 3 days, we only have to come up with 2 days for someone else to sit there. That's all I have.
Oh, Nancy, you're really going to sit there for 3 days? 3 days a week, 8 hours a day? If you are, I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you more about that. Lots been said, lots been done tonight. Continue to move forward. I want to congratulate wrestling coach Kevin Vogel on the 2020 State Coach of the Year for wrestling. He's great for the sport and great for the community, and we just love him. I also want to extend my deepest sympathies to the Keene family. Joe was a great man. He served the fire department well, and he served his community very well. I do want to talk a little bit about the budget. This board talked 2 months ago when we completed our budget and approved it, that in August, when we found out what our state share of revenue was, we would have another meeting. So I think the board needs to talk about a possibility of having another meeting because our state share revenue check came in and it's plus. It's not in the negative at all. So the money that we cut out of our budget, the roughly $860,000, plus we're spending roughly $200,000 less on roads than we budgeted for, we have a surplus of $1 million. So for this year, so we need to get back to the table. I talked to Ms. Janizek. There's a couple things minor that she'd like to add back in, and just look at our budget as a whole. or we don't. I mean, we could leave it as is. But it's something we at least need to talk about. We did have an emergency project that needed to be done at the fire department off Lewis Avenue. They had no outside lights. Talked to Glick, got a quote, and they're performing the work to make sure they can have lights outside at night. They couldn't see it was a safety hazard. The cost of that was roughly $2,000. I'll send the bill out to you guys or show you what it was, exactly what was done, but just wanted to bring it to your attention. But back to the budget a little bit, there's some misconceptions out there about our rainy day fund. We have $1.8 million in cash in the bank in the rainy day fund. Now, why it's showing on paper at 1.1 million is because we had to borrow that against the fire department work that we had done at $700,000. So that's why it's showing 1.1. But this board has run a deficit over the last 4 or 5 years because this board and past board decided not to tax each homeowner $75 per home. They decided to spend the money, and Ms. Tinneberry championed that, spend the money out of our general fund and our rainy day fund, which it was at $4 or $5 million or something like that. It was a lot of money, $3 million, and so we spent it down to a fund that is safe. It's around 1.5 million. It's actually 1.8 million, but it's showing 1.1 on paper. So we fixed the roads. That's why we're showing that. Well, this year we're at a point now, and I'm proud to say, after my roads meeting with engineers and our roads meeting with the road commission, we have some of the best roads in the county by far. And this year we're just in maintenance mode. So kudos to the board on a maintenance asset management program that we've stuck to, that we fixed the roads, we've worked on it. Everybody's done a great job, and the roads are at a point now where we only need to maintenance them. We have some chip seals we need to do next year. Adler roads, still in discussion as far as with Whiteford, what they want to do. So we could see a little fix there, maintenance fix, but we're doing very good. And so financially, if the board makes no changes to the budget, we'll have $2.8 million next year in the rainy day fund. So look forward to that. And but other than that, I have volunteerism with our maintenance department and the ironworkers of Local 55 the week after Labor Day. I talked to the park board and the ironworkers today to schedule the fine details. It'll be a Wednesday and a Thursday. They're starting at 9 o'clock at Carr Park. They're going to be assisting our maintenance department in putting all the park equipment up. So there's a lot of equipment. Mr. Clemens, you guys spent roughly $40,000 or $50,000 or something like that in replacement equipment, something like that.
Yes, it's a replacement parts and necessary maintenance to be done to keep them within the scope of their safety rating.
Okay, and so just so the board knows, this was a project that the maintenance guys really couldn't get to until after the next year. So we didn't want it sitting around. So I got with our great Local 55, and they're going to assist in it and knock it out hopefully next Wednesday, Thursday, all the projects for all 3 parks, White, Carr, and Samaria. So I'm excited about that. Volunteerism is huge. We continue to have great partnerships, and I plan to continue those. So if nobody has any further comments, we stand adjourned.